my loves, and welcome once again to the Fluffenhammer Adjacent. And it's a very extra special, lovely one today because it's all about Slaanesh and the Emperor's Children. I love the Emperor's Children. One of the original Chaos Space Marine Legions in many respects. One of the very first ever detailed, way back when, in Slaves to Darkness, Realms of Chaos Slaves to Darkness, which dealt with the World Eaters and Emperor's Children primarily in 40k. It also had a weird little Black Legion list as well. And when I say weird, I mean really weird. The Black Legion has changed a lot since then. I mean, like the background of the Black Legion has changed almost completely since then, barring one or two extra little bits of details. The Emperor's Children have also changed an awful amount since then. In the original background back then, and really right up until the publication of the original Horus Heresy novels, the Emperor's Children were one of the legions that remained loyalist and that were sent to parley with Horus at Istvan. They were corrupted in a parley with Horus and his officers originally, and then turned on their allies. That was completely done away with for the more recent fluff, the more recent background, changed completely so that they, along with the World Eaters and the Death Guard, and the Iron Warriors, were one of the original legions that fell. And it's much cleaner. It does make more sense to do it that way, to be perfectly honest, and then leave just the Iron Warriors, Alpha Legion, and the Night Lords and the others who are present at Istvan to be the ones that turned on their allies. That makes a hell of a lot more sense. Now, the Emperor's Children, for me, are right up there with the Death Guard and the Thousand Sons. One of my favorites, one of my absolute favorites. In fact, if it came down to a competition between all of them, I think the Emperor's Children would probably win out. I love their background, I love their aesthetics, I love their ideology, and I mean, they are dedicated to my favorite chaos power, which is Slaanesh. I've got a real thing about Dionysian gods. When it comes down to it, in terms of my own personal ideologies, the way I perceive the world, and the way I operate internally, I'm more Dionysian than I am Hermetic. That's for damn sure. I believe in beauty and aesthetics and pleasure for their own sakes, as their own arguments. Now, obviously, Slaanesh is a bit extreme in that regard, in that there's no parameter at all in Slaanesh. Everything is welcome, everything is wonderful. And that's what's so interesting about the Emperor's Children. Um, Before they fell, the Emperor's Children were one of the legions where you could see them surviving. If the Great Crusade had succeeded and brought all of the galaxy under its purview and united all of the disparate factions and civilizations of humanity together in one empire, the Emperor's Children are one of the very, very few Space Marine legions you can see having a place in that structure, right? In the post Great Crusade world. Legions like the Space Wolves, the Iron Warriors, the World Eaters, the Night Lords, they had no place whatsoever. They would have had to have been destroyed. There would have been no choice. Angron was kind of right in that regard. They would have had to have been destroyed. Probably the Death Guard, too, to be honest. They wouldn't really have had a position or a slot in that world. But the Emperor's Children would have, and that's because, like the Thousand Sons, they're not just weapons. They're not just instruments of war. They believe in, or believed in, culture and in art and in intellectualism and philosophy and academia. The thing about the Emperor's Children is that Fulgrim, their Primarch, he put civilization and culture ahead of anything else. His whole, a bit like Magnus the Red, his whole ideology, it 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 sort of balanced on the notion that there was a future. He had a kind of utopianism in his heart. He wanted to be part of shaping a cultural future for humanity, for dragging it out of the dirt. He didn't want what actually happened, which is the Imperium as we have it, where there's no real culture at all. It's all just ground down into the most perfunctory, functional condition imaginable. He wanted enlightenment. He wanted a Renaissance period where humanity could be far, far more than merely survivalist and functionary. So the cultures that the Emperor's children touched or conquered, if you like, during the Great Crusade were often left better off than before they were found, because the Emperor's children cultivated in them a love of art and academia and the more abstract notions of civilization. And it's really kind of beautiful. I mean, their utopianism is kind of beautiful. And Fulgrim inculcated that into his warriors. So, unlike most of the Space Marine legions, they were a legion of individuals, of artists and musicians and composers and sculptors and poets and aesthetes. I love that. I absolutely love that. Of course, it didn't work out because they also became obsessives and narcissists and monsters and sadists. The Even before Fulgrim fell, the seeds of their decline were there. I mean, they were naturally inclined towards being taken by Slaanesh anyway. And characters like Fabius Bile, for example, had already begun kind of corruption within the Legion by tampering with their genetics and introducing Xenos elements even to their genetics, far, far beyond any prescription of the Imperium or the Emperor. If he'd have been found out before the Legion's fall to Slaanesh, he would have been, I mean, he would have been beyond censored. He would have been killed. He would have been executed. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that's what makes them so interesting to me. It's carried on bizarrely into their present day incarnation. One of the things that makes the Emperor's Children so interesting is that they're not really like other Chaos Space Marine legions. They are an army of individuals. Every individual Slaanesh worshipper, every Emperor's Children Marine follows their own obsessions and their own whims and their own inspirations. And that includes with regards to themselves and their own armor and weapons and their own bodies. They all cultivate themselves, sometimes surgically. They sculpt themselves and beautify themselves. So the scope for individuality in your miniatures and in the background for your army is huge. It's absolutely huge on a purely hobby level. They're almost unparalleled. They're almost unparalleled. Every miniature can be an individual. That's what's so great about them. And they will have their own unique armor and weapons and mutations and surgical enhancements and even color schemes. I mean, that's another thing. They don't follow any uniform, the Emperor's Children, not really. So you can kind of do what you like with them. There's such freedom in them. And that goes for their background as well. You could have an entire, like, for example, under the new background for Slaanesh, the more recent stuff that's coming, you've got circles of Slaanesh that each represent one of the core obsessions, the sins that are part and parcel of the god's purview. So you could have an entire army of Emperor's Children dedicated to the circle of gluttony, for example, where they're all bloated cannibals and they have like butcher's aprons and almost like kitchen utensils and things like that, And that would be so much fun to model, so much fun to model. On the other hand, you could have an entire army dedicated to the circle of avidity, where they're all in gold and jewels and things. The scope is huge. The scope is just huge. Ideologically speaking, I mean, in terms of the background, they are very. If you read the Graham McNeil novels, they are very, very close. They're inspired by the work of Clive Barker. There's a very Cenobitic element to the Emperor's Children, in that after their fall to Slaanesh, part of Slaanesh's blessing is that all experience becomes welcome, including pain. Pain just becomes another suite of experience to them, and that's what's happened to them. Their bodies become sources of pleasure and of artistic inspiration. So there are novels and short stories within the Horus Heresy where they are terrible things are happening to them. Like they're being airlocks are being opened or blown open in their ships, and they are dying in ecstasies because death is just another consummation of experience. These guys are afraid of nothing. There's nothing that isn't welcome to an Emperor's Children Marine other than boredom, other than regularity. That's the thing with Slanesh Marines. Everything is a potential source of experience, and they love it. They absolutely love it. And I kind of love that too. They are still, in their own peculiar way, artists and expressionists and actors and aesthetes. It's just that the mediums for their art are extremely abstract and bizarre. You know, they carve out paintings of terror and pain and mutilation in the bodies of their victims, and it's kind of horrific. One of the worst things imaginable would be being taken alive by the Emperor's children in the 41st millennium. There are things they could show the Drukhari, you know, the homunculi, I'm telling you. They are sadists, but in a very bizarrely utopian manner, because to them, pain and the experience of things like fear and domination are actually welcome. Again, it is a holy principle for them because they're dedicated to Slanesh, and under Slanesh, these things are wondrous and welcome. It's really strange. It's really strange. They're also very interesting in terms of their organization. This may change when the new codex comes out. I don't know. This might change. But as it currently stands, they are kind of antipodean to the World Eaters. The Death Guard and the Thousand Sons are both quite organized. They have central authority and they have cohesion. They have homeworlds. But the World Eaters and thus far the Emperor's Children do not. They are fractured into various war bands, each of which is accrued around their own champions and their own idols, that has their own ideologies, their own agendas, their own ways of worshipping Slanesh, and their own sins and obsessions that they're dedicated to. And that is so cool. I love that so, so much. They are, beyond a shadow of a doubt, some of my favorite, favorite Chaos Space Marines out there. I have a very, 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 very sizable Emperor's Children army that's been gathering, oh God, for years now, probably since fifth edition. I've been putting this together, and it is just made out of bits from my bits box. When I get an idea or an inspiration for a new miniature, I just put it together and add it to one of the squads, and you can go nuts with them. I mean, even arguably even more so than the Death Guard, which is a modeler's paradise. You can make every miniature individual in an Emperor's Children army, and also it's a wonderful expression of the depths of your imagination. How awful can you make these guys? Just how tortured and mutated and twisted and cut open, and there's such wonderful stuff to be done here. I mean, very much so. Artists are a great inspiration. So, like Bosch and Beksinski and Giger, Clive Barker's work, the Cenobites are a great source of inspiration because that's kind of what they are. Of course, their core unit are the Noise Marines. And the Noise Marines have evolved a lot. They used to be a joke. I mean, they were introduced as a joke. They were literally hair metal Marines with guitars and silly mohawks and whatnot. But they have changed a lot. They've become much more priestly in nature and much more cenobitic. If you read some of the Black Library novels that feature Noise Marines, they are like a cult apart from the rest of the Emperor's Children. They're often secluded away from the rest of the crew in their own weird cathedra, and what they are trying to do, certainly the ones that we've read about in the Black Library novels, they're trying to recreate that perfect resonance, that perfect piece of music, the music of the spheres that echoed through the universe when Slanesh was born, the same birthing scream that devoured the souls of the Eldari. That's what they're tuned into, and that's what they're trying to recreate. They hear and perceive the universe in a way that no other being in the 41st millennium does. And it lends them this really strange, almost like isolated quality, a cenobitic quality, funnily enough, in a very literal sense. And it's wonderful. It's really, really beautiful. Now, Fulgrim. I love the demon primarchs of all of the cult legions. So Angron, Mortarion, Magnus, and Fulgrim. Fulgrim for me is right up there with Magnus the Red as amongst my favorites. I love his character. I love what he was seeking. I mean, it goes wrong, obviously, but I love the fact that his whole shtick was trying to elevate humanity, to drag it out of the dirt, to make it more, to make humanity realize that there's artists in all of us. Of course, that went very wrong. In the Horus Heresy novels, he's initially possessed. It's really interesting. He's possessed by a demon sword or the demon from within, like a chaos blade. And his soul, there's a bit of Oscar Wilde here, the picture of Dorian Gray. His soul is transplanted into a painting that was made of him. But he managed through his experiences, he manages to free himself. He starts to perceive through the demon that's inhabiting his body the truth of the universe. He starts to perceive what Slanesh is. And through Slanesh, he sees truth. He sees the manifest everything that he ever wanted, like the very manifestation of art and pleasure and culture, which Slanesh is in a very extreme way. But that's what Slanesh is. Those things are cultivated, they're captured within Slanesh. Um, and as a result, he manages to take back his body to conquer the demon. And from that moment on, he becomes so clear in what he is and what he wants and what the universe is. It's really beautiful. He has a Saul on the road to Damascus moment where he throws off all the shackles, all the restrictions that he was born to, and becomes something entirely other. After that point, nothing matters anymore. The universe becomes his playground, and that is his entire shtick throughout the heresy. Doesn't give a shit if Horus's heresy succeeds. Doesn't care. All he cares about is how much fun everything is. And when in Graham McNeil's novel Angel Exterminatus, when he ascends to demonhood, there is a moment that for me is the perfect description of that experience. It's like his eyes open upon all of reality, all of creation. He sees in that split instant all time, all experience, all inspiration, all culture, all history is his to consume in that moment. And from that moment on, that's it. That's it. He becomes the very personification of abandon. There is no grander agenda in Fulgrim. He's not like Magnus, he's not like Mortarion, he's not even like Angron. He doesn't have like a plan per se. He's just having a ball. He's enjoying himself. He's taunting Robert Guilliman from by sending him dark dreams from thousands of miles away. He's just enjoying himself, and there is nothing else to it. And I love that. I also love him aesthetically. I mean, all the demon Primarchs look amazing, but Fulgrim, when he becomes demonic, that serpent body, the four arms, the angel wings, he is astounding. He's so beautiful. My favorite aesthetically of all of them. And of course, I mean, we know that the Emperor's Children are coming either late this edition or early next edition, and we'll be getting a 40k miniature of Fulgrim, and I can't wait. I cannot wait to see what they do with him. If the other Demon Primarchs are anything to go by, he'll be absolutely astounding, and he's going to be an auto buy for me. I mean, the entire Emperor's Children range will be. And that's another thing, right? When they hit, I wonder what they're going to have. Obviously, we're going to have new Noise Marines for the first time practically ever. We're actually going to have a dedicated Noise Marine box set. But we'll have other stuff as well. There'll almost certainly be either or a possessed and or Terminator unit, which will be great. We'll have a couple of new characters. Lucius, we'll have a new Lucius, almost certainly. Um, Possibly some other units too will have a mortal unit. That's the other thing you can do with the Emperor's Children on a hobby level that's so much fun. In the background, they're always accompanied by carnivals and orgies and gaggles of mortals that are dedicated to Slanesh that have also lost themselves. And they are as various and as horrific and beautiful and weird as the Emperor's Children themselves. So really, there should be like a Cyberitic Carnival unit, which is the cultist equivalent, which is just madness. It's just madness. It's a carnival. It's a circus. It's crazy. It's like it's cenobitic. They're flayed and they're tortured, but they're enjoying it. They're enjoying it. That's the real horror of the Emperor's Children, and that's the beauty of them too. That is kind of what I want to see, to be honest. And I mean, if they do with the Emperor's Children what they did with the Hedonites of Slaanesh, it'll be the most amazing miniatures range. Because honestly, if you're into Slaanesh, that range is perfection. It is absolute perfection. The mortal units for the Hedonites of Slaanesh are so beautiful. Yeah, I just can't even get it. I cannot get over how good they are. And I hope they bring some of that aesthetic to the Emperor's Children. There's so much you can do with them. And, I hope they're an expansive release too. I mean, I love the World Eaters and I love the Thousand Sons, but they are a very truncated miniatures range. They could do with expanding a little bit. I'm hoping the Emperor's Children are a bit closer to the Death Guard, to be perfectly honest, where they have a lot more units available on release. Let's wait and see. I personally cannot wait.